You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
We'll try to spice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood art Ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today we're looking at David Hockney. David Hockney was born on July 9th, 1937, in Bradford, a city in the county of Yorkshire in the north of England. He was the fourth of 5 children, born to parents who were conscientious objectors during World War II. His father, Kenneth Hockney, was known for his eccentric style and anti-authoritarian views, which likely influenced David's independent spirit. From a very young age, Hockney knew he wanted to be an artist, often doodling and drawing in the margins of his school books. His formal art education began at the Bradford School of Art, which he attended from 1953 to 1957. Even as a student, Hockney was a standout talent, but he was also said to be a bit rebellious. When he moved on to the prestigious Royal College of Art in London in 1959, he found the curriculum rigid and old-fashioned. The school emphasized abstract painting, which was the dominant style at the time, but Hockney was more interested in drawing from life and exploring personal themes. Now, on the topic of drawing from life, I think it's important to get into a bit of Hockney's life and his experiences. One of the most important aspects of both his life and his work, even in those student days, was his identity as a gay man. Hockney was out and open to the public about his identity at a time when being gay was still illegal in Britain. And his early paintings often contained coded references, including text from the poetry of Walt Whitman and references to his crushes, like the singer Cliff Richard. This was a bold and risky move at the time. But his relationships weren't the only aspect of his life where he got a little bit controversial. When he was graduating from the Royal College of Art in 1962, Hockney faced an interesting challenge. The college refused to grant him his diploma because he hadn't completed a required essay. In protest, Hockney drew a satirical sketch called The Diploma. The college administration actually recognized his huge talent and growing fame from his first exhibition, and eventually they backed down, changing the rules to award him the diploma. It was a classic Hockney moment, challenging authority with a bit of wit and artistic flair. Shortly after that, in 1964, Hockney went on his first trip to Los Angeles, California, and this was a very impactful trip. The bright, constant sunlight was vastly different from the gray skies of England. He fell in love with the city's modern architecture, the laid-back lifestyle, and, famously, its swimming pools. The swimming pool became a recurring motif in his work, a symbol of leisure, luxury, and the California dream. California is really what sort of solidified Hockney's style. He began experimenting with acrylic paints, finding that the flat, bright colors were perfect for capturing clean lines of modernist homes and the brilliant blue of the water under the California sun. He also started using peroxide to bleach his hair blonde, a look that became sort of his hallmark, inspired by the Clairol advertisement that declared blondes have more fun. During the late 1960s and 70s, Hockney's fame grew internationally. He became known for his double portraits, large-scale paintings of his friends and patrons in their domestic settings. Perhaps the most famous was Mr. and Mrs. Clark and Percy from 1971, a portrait of the fashion designer Ozzie Clark and his wife, the textile designer Cecilia Birtwell. These paintings are remarkable not just for the depiction of the space and the light, but also they have a sort of psychological depth to them. And throughout his career, Hockney was always one to experiment with new media, and in the 1980s, he became fascinated with photography. But what's interesting is he wouldn't just take a single picture. He felt a single photograph couldn't capture the way we truly see the world moving through time and space, so he created what he called joiners, large collages made from dozens, sometimes hundreds of Polaroid or 35mm photos pieced together to create a fragmented, multi-perspective view of a person or a place. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, after spending decades in LA, Hockney decided to return to his roots. He moved back to England and began painting landscapes. He traded the swimming pools of California for the rolling hills, country lanes, and changing seasons of his childhood home. He painted enormous multi-panel canvases outdoors, capturing the landscape with vibrant, almost electric colors. And of course, he continued to embrace new technology throughout this time. In the 2010s, he became one of the first major artists to seriously explore the artistic potential of the iPhone and then the iPad. He used a drawing app to create hundreds of digital drawings from still lifes to landscapes, which he would often email to his friends first thing in the morning. I love this because he's one of those artists who shows that true artists are about the vision and not the tools. And I think that's why throughout all those decades, Hockney has remained one of the world's most popular and influential living artists. He's not just a master draftsman or a brilliant colorist. He's an innovator, never afraid to push the boundaries and try new things in his art. And he does it all with this joyful, celebratory sense. While a lot of artists will look closely at the world around them, painting the people and the landscapes, serving as sort of a mirror to society, Hockney does all that, but he also kind of gives the world the generous edit. There's this calm, peaceful, soothing, and just happy tone to a lot of his work that you look at it and it's a breath of fresh air. It's the best version of the world around us. And I think we need that in the world today. Now, after a short break, we're going to take a closer look at one of his most famous works, A Bigger Splash. Welcome back. Today we're looking at A Bigger Splash by David Hockney. A Bigger Splash was painted in 1967. It is a big painting, about 8 feet by 8 feet. Interestingly, Hockney didn't paint this like on the conventional stretchers. He took the canvas and tacked it to the wall as he was working on it. And when we see the painting displayed today, we can see sort of the bare edges of the canvas, sort of framing it, kind of like a Polaroid picture, has that white edge around the perimeter. I always found it kind of interesting seeing this painting that in some ways has a photographic feel to it, the way it's capturing that splash in a moment in time. But, it's not that instantaneous snap of a picture. It's something that was carefully and meticulously painted in his studio. Hockney painted it with acrylic on canvas. As I said earlier, it's that acrylic paint dries so quickly and it's so bright and flat, and it just works perfectly for the layering and that crisp aesthetic he wanted. The painting depicts a Californian scene, a modern house with simple flat-roofed building, large glass windows. There's this bright blue sky, and in the foreground, we see a yellow diving board jutting out into the frame, almost like sort of leading us into the composition, pointing us at the focal point of course, the swimming pool with the giant splash in it. The composition, aside from that splash, is extremely serene and peaceful. It's sort of an outlier in that there's no person visible within the frame, just sort of the hints at human existence. We see an empty chair, we see the splash, but not the person who made it. So we know that someone went into the pool, but we can't see them. It's kind of an interesting play off of these horizontals that seem so steady and calm and peaceful and at rest with the obvious disruption of that splash. I like that sort of bit of contrast. He said the inspiration for this painting came from, when he came across a photograph in a manual about how to build swimming pools or something like that. He was intrigued by this idea of painting something as fleeting as a splash of water that only lasts for a moment. He later explained, quote, "I loved the idea of painting this thing that lasts for 2 seconds. It takes me 2 weeks to paint this event that lasts for 2 seconds," end quote. It's part of a series of 3 splash paintings, but this is the largest and most famous. And as I said, the scene is dominated by these strong, mostly horizontal lines. We do see some verticals and like the palm trees and stuff, but mostly when we look at like the roof line, the edge of the pool, it's all horizontal, flat, sort of sedentary. It feels very at rest and visually satisfying looking at this. And then right in the middle, that pristine order is just shattered by the chaotic, energetic splash. And the splash implies a human presence. Someone just went into the pool, but we can't see them. The figure is completely absent. There's nobody in the chair. There's nobody on the side. There's nobody visible at all within this painting. But still, we know there must be somebody in the scene, just out of view. And for some people, this can be kind of frustrating. I mean, we, the viewers, have just missed the main event. We're left to imagine the diver and the moments leading up to the splash. This technique of showing the effect but not the cause makes the painting really engaging. It leaves us to wonder and to think about and to imagine, and I think that's what makes it so successful. In some ways, I see it similar to the allure of things like Hokusai's Great Wave, where we see the wave towering over the boat and we can anticipate what's going to happen. Here we see what has happened and we can sort of imagine and think and puzzle about what happened before that and what's going to happen next. But I always love these pieces that hint at a narrative and leave space for us to fill in the blanks and to come to our own conclusions and figure out the story for ourselves. It gets us as the viewers thinking critically about what we're seeing and trying to make sense of the work. That's what holds our attention. That's what makes it stand out from other pieces that are just nice to look at, but it's all readily available. It's all obvious on the surface. Now, many people look at works like A Bigger Splash and kind of lump it in with pop art, but I think it's important to recognize Hockney doesn't really neatly fit into that category. Many pop artists were critiquing consumer culture with a cool, sort of detached irony. But I think Hockney was a little bit more earnest and sincere in his celebration of the subjects that he was painting. And his work feels much more personal. Ultimately, I think this painting is more about the embrace of the environment that was fascinating to him. It so perfectly captures 1960s LA. It's become sort of a cultural touchstone, appearing in films and posters. And yet, as much as people will say it is totally mid-century modern California, it's also tackling a classic artistic problem: how to represent time and motion in a static, two-dimensional painting. By freezing the most fleeting moment, the splash, against a background of flat, calm, orderly, geometric composition, Hockney invites us to think about the nature of time, memory, and perception.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.